China is in a sense 1 year behind the rest of the region. The rest of the region suffered terribly during the Delta wave in 2021 and then bounced back in 2022. For China, the hard year was 2022 with the Omicron virus. So what we have seen is a significant bounce back. Many of these indicators of manufacturing optimism or services optimism are in expansionary territory. But it is true that this growth isn't a full-blooded revival. There are concerns about unevenness. Consumers are back, but they're not splurging on big ticket items. Property prices have stabilized, but we haven't yet seen, increase in property sales outside the big cities. And finally, while for the rest of the region in its bounce back in 2022, the world was still growing, export demand was resilient. China has took countenance with the fact that the world is slowing down, so export growth is likely to be slower. So I agree with you that perhaps the recovery isn't as full-blooded, but it is a significant recovery, and we project growth of over 5%.
Of over 5%. Goldman is putting a number of 6%. Do you think China is being conservative? And are your estimates also in line with that, a bit conservative to not really factor in what could happen in the back half of this year?
If I can, take the liberty of saying that a far more interesting question than what precisely China's growth will be in this coming year is how China navigates these big challenges it faces, the ones that you identified. The fact that the population is aging, the fact that there is a retreat from openness and greater trade tensions, and the fact that it is both contributing to climate change, but also a victim of climate change. And I think how even before COVID, China had chosen, in a sense, to move down a gear, to trade off the quantity of growth to secure a higher quality of growth in terms of making growth more inclusive, making growth more stable, and making growth more green. I think the more interesting question is how China deals with those other objectives now, what instruments it deploys, and how much coherence there is in both the instruments it deploys and the institutions it creates to achieve those goals.